It's time to make sports talk great again with Curt Schilling and Steve Deace.
And greetings. Welcome to The Blaze. Each and every day, I am Steve Deace. He is Curt Schilling, World Series champion, Hall of Famer. To come, we talk sports. We put 25 minutes on the clock. Whether you're listening to us today on the podcast platform of your choice, and if you are, please leave us a 5-star review if you like what we do here. Or you're watching on YouTube. If you are, give us a like and subscribe and share the link. Thank you. Or just right here on The Blaze. Are you ready to go, Curt Schilling?
Ready to go.
Then we begin starting now. So I cannot, as Larry Holmes once proffered the phrase, hold your jockstrap when it comes to baseball knowledge, obviously. But we are watching play out two things. One thing I am pretty good at, though, is analyzing situations when given data. And two things I have said all along about the Bryce Harper sweepstakes are that, A, if he wanted to sign with the Phillies, it just seems like he could have done this a long time ago, gotten ingratiated in the culture of the franchise, right? You know what I'm saying? It looks almost like he knows he can call them for a booty call on a Friday night, and he's really hoping somebody hotter answers his text. And then the other thing I've offered to you is, at what point does your old friend Theo Epstein of the Cubs come in and just say, hey, you know what, we'll give you, an astronomical amount of money for a couple of years. Come here and win a World Series. Well, lo and behold, both of these stories that we have been discussing off and on throughout the course of this simmering stove league came to fruition yesterday. That Harper just doesn't like Gabe Kapler. Or maybe not like is a strong way of putting that, just doesn't feel there's a match there. He prefers more of an old school guy than, the analytics and the media personality, which may be why he was attracted to the Giants before, Boshi decided he was going to retire. He's about as old school as it gets, right? And now he's looking at the Dodgers, and lo and behold, the Cubs, who were his first choices all along. Your thoughts on this news as he remains unsigned while spring training games are getting underway?
Well, first off, you're right. He could have signed, I think, months ago with the Phillies. I don't think there was any trouble getting into a number he was comfortable with. I don't know what the holdup is, but if you listen to Gabe Kapler yesterday, he did a little presser yesterday. He was talking about the excitement of adding a star player either now or down the road, as if, in his mind, I think something was on the table, which I think we all know. I think last I heard it was $330 million for 9 or 10 years or whatever the number is, which is what it is. But there are other teams in play. He could have signed by now. Two reasons he doesn't sign in Philly. Number one, he's missing the first couple weeks of spring training that every player complains about, which is entirely likely. Mm-hmm. Or number two, he wants to find a better result than the Philly thing. And I had the opportunity to meet this young man a couple years back, and I can tell you, in my mind, an incredibly well-spoken, articulate, very mature, respectful guy who I do believe looks kind of fondly at the old school. In a sense. And Madden and Bochy, and I think Roberts to some degree bring that. And he's met all them. Gabe is just different, and it's not a bad thing. He's just a very different person from a manager's perspective. He's much less of an authority figure, and I think there's a lot of effort there to be a coach and a cheerleader and sometimes a teammate.
Mm-hmm. What does this do to the city of Philadelphia?
Well,
if they get neither him and Machado's obviously off the table, you go through this offseason, you don't add any of those major pieces when you had all this money to spend, and your owner said you were going to spend it. I mean, you competed in this city. What's it do to the franchise and the fans?
There's a couple things. These are hardcore fans, and most of them, I think, agree. No deal is far better than a bad deal. But there's also the other half who said, hey, you told us X was going to happen and you lied. There'll be it's all going to come down to how they get out of the gate and how they play. I mean, that's, as I know that sounds very simplistic, but the fact of the matter is if they end up at the end of April at 21-4, and they're in first place by 5 games. No one will even remember that this is happening.
So you know how the players and the teams and the franchises think, but I've been a fan longer than you. So let me tell you how fans roll. Okay, and you saw it from the outside in as a player. In a city like Philly, they love they're gonna rally originally around the fact, blue collar town like that. They're gonna rally originally around the fact, we didn't pay that spoiled athlete $330 million a year for a contract we know we'd all regret in year 7, 8, or 9. Right? Those are going to be the original calls. And then when they're 10 games behind the Mets and the Braves around Father's Day, then that's when the worm's going to turn. And folks are going to be calling in then and saying, we had all this money to spend. We're a top 5 market. We couldn't bring a player here. What are we doing? I mean, we're getting outwitted by the Mets front office of all people. Are you freaking kidding me?
Or they'll be 3 games back. He'll be the All-Star Game MVP, hitting .330 with 31 homers and 90 run RBIs at the break. And they'll be the what ifs. What if we had him? There's a lot of different scenarios. Here's where it's getting to, though, Steve. It's getting to a point where the booty call is getting ready to block the number, in a sense.
I hear you.
It's because they don't want to be second fiddle. And for $330 million, you shouldn't be.
Is there an angle to this? You're talking about the Dodgers and the Cubs. These have been postseason regulars the last few years. What the Dodgers have been to the postseason, was it 4 years in a row or something like that? Okay. These are postseason regulars. The Cubs just won a World Series a few years ago. Got to the World Series the year before that. So are they? These are nucleuses, or is it nuclei, that are used to, for the most part, are largely used to playing together, have an off-season routine. Again, you can speak to that, having been a part of organizations like this. And then this guy comes in at the last minute, 2-3 weeks into spring training. Is that just an instant insert? How does that work?
It depends on the people. Let me just throw another team in the mix that I've talked to some people, and I'm not so sure how serious it is, but I could totally see it. Well, 2 teams. St. Louis.
I knew you were going to say the Cardinals. That has been your off-season man crush, has been the St. Louis Cardinals. The Astros.
Yeah. There's a potential here for the Astros don't need him. There are a lot of teams. But I mean, anybody can use a guy. If he plays to his potential, everybody needs him. But the Astros is an interesting one because it's just interesting.
If you're a Nats fan, why aren't you burning up the phone lines to your local sports talk radio station saying, the guy's unsigned, we have the best 3-man pitching rotation if everybody's healthy in the National League. Why don't we just call him and make sure, since he's already living here, the family's already got roots here, let's just make sure there's nothing we could offer to get him to stay. Why wouldn't you do that?
Well, it's a good question, and it's one you need to ask yourself as fans. Why would my team, who's already owned this guy, not be moving heaven and earth to make it happen? And I would argue that in many cases the answer is because it all is not what it seems at the surface. Mm-hmm. Having, and I'm not saying in any way that's this case, but that's one of the things that people miss on, which is if someone who's had a star player isn't moving heaven and earth to keep that star player, there's a reason. Maybe they don't think he's worth it, or maybe it's more headache than it's worth. Mm-hmm. I don't know. What every experience I've had with the young man, he's been what you'd hope, but there are other things.
If we're going to be fairly critical here, I mean, last year was the rare time the big name guy heading to the free agent market didn't have that, all universe season. I've quoted this to you before. One of my favorite Sparky Anderson quotes from my childhood was, give me 9 guys who are pretty good all going into their contract year. I'm going to win you the pennant every single time. Right. Okay. Right. So, I mean, this was a guy that was Manny Machado had a great year last year.
Yeah.
Okay. In 2 different leagues, by the way, one for a team going nowhere and another for a team that he, ended up helping to lead to the World Series. So in this case, this is the guy that had everything set up for him to have that no doubt pay me my money year. And aside from the home run derby at the All-Star break, he didn't have that season. Remember when you and I debuted this show at the All-Star break last year and into the trading deadline, we were talking about whether they should trade him right now and get whatever they can for him. Remember that?
Yep. Also, I would tell you that having a bad season is not like having a bad day. right? 6 months or having a great season, it's hard. And that's not to make excuses. But the fact of the matter is this is going to be, you're paying for what this guy is going to bring, not what he's brought. And I think that everybody believes that is, it's worth it. Again, I think we're going to see something. And you know, one of the arguments
when we come back on Monday, is he going to be signed? I mean, we have tomorrow's show, but
yes.
I think we're assuming he's not signing in the next 24 hours. When we come back on Monday after the weekend, do you think he'll be signed by then? I
think we're at a point. Let's put it this way: if we come back on Monday and he'll be signed. If he's not signed, he's not going to Philly.
Okay.
Because I think that like I said, I think that whole, I think in a sense his agent's wearing out his welcome. And that's the other place. I got to tell you, for young athletes, that's the other part about, I represented myself the last 12 years of my career as my own agent. One of the reasons why is because of things like this.
Could it be, though, that the agent's doing his bidding? Could it be that the agent is the guy saying,
No, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Well, we're here because of what the agent said.
Right. Yeah. My client doesn't want to come here. Okay.
Right. And what he's saying is, what the agent's saying is, I'll represent. It's the age old that, hey, listen, you just sit back, I'll take care of this.
Right.
Every time they do that, athletes fail to understand, no matter what you think or say or how you feel, whatever your agent's saying is what people are hearing you say, period. And that's not a good thing in many cases.
Yeah, one of these days we will have to clear out some time and have a conversation about you representing yourself and what that was like and why you made that decision. All right, let's go one of the stories we talked about earlier this week that appears to have some resolution to it. So we talked earlier this week about the voice of the Iowa Hawkeyes, Gary Dolphin, getting indefinitely suspended, at least for the remainder of the season. And a lot of people thought that he was done after referring to Maryland basketball star Bruno Fernando as, quote, King Kong down there, which, of course, was unconscious bias and racism, allegedly. All right?
Yeah, his inner racist.
Yes, so who knew? For all these years, the University of Iowa had employed a racist, and they just discovered this a decade and a half into him calling every single sporting event of theirs that's actually mattered.
Ever.
So here's the thing. Now, a new element came about on Tuesday evening. So the Iowa basketball team, nationally ranked, went into Ohio State and got absolutely boat raced. Okay, I mean they got prison molested in this game, and a guy that had averaged like 4 points a game for an entire year had like 32 points in this game, just shooting wide open jump shots. Iowa played no defense whatsoever. Both the head coach that doesn't like the play-by-play guy Gary Dolphin, the head coach Fran McCaffery, who's kind of developed a reputation as maybe one of the hot-headed coaches in college basketball, you know. There's kind of the frantrum. He has a tantrum pretty much every game, you know. And his son is the backup point guard. His son gets a technical, which I thought was a garbage call on the kid. I watched the whole game. All right? The technical on the son was garbage, okay? So, but now apparently dad feels like he's got to get his in too. So this is the first time in all the college basketball games I've watched since 1983, I have never seen a father-son teed combo, okay? I guess in honor of Gary Dolphin, Curt, we could say both Fran McCaffery and his son Connor both went ape in the game. See what I did there? You like that? Yeah. How about them apples, right? How about them bananas, right? Yeah, you like that?
You're a racist.
Yes, apparently. So after the game, the Hawkeyes are losing by 20 points. Kyle Rowland of the Toledo Blade tweets out, "Holy crap, I was just basically standing around and I watched Fran McCaffery screaming at an official walking down the back hallway of the arena, 'You cheating mother blanker, you're a blanking disgrace.'" All right. So, of course, we live in this day and age where every time someone in the media, and it's not like there isn't a ton of fake news out there, right? But we're at the point now, though, that anytime someone in the media reports something that is not convenient for you to believe, it's clickbait and it's fake news. Well, lo and behold, the story was from Kyle Rowland of the Toledo Blade was actually true. And so now the University of Iowa has a PR, whatever the PR nightmare was with Dolphin before. Now you've got your coach accusing referees of cheating in the game while you're Can you imagine going into the final weekend of the regular season and your head coach and your play-by-play guy are both suspended. All right, because one's a racist and one accuses the referees of cheating.
No, and one was caught saying something every single coach says in every sport pretty much every day of every season.
So the next morning, lo and behold, after they have refused comment on this story for an entire week, the next morning, lo and behold, the University of Iowa abruptly announces Gary Dolphin will be reinstated. It just happened after the basketball season, right? Because now I'll give him credit. This was the first time the University of Iowa's PR departments had some self-awareness and many a moon, all right? Because they recognize we cannot have both of these issues dangling participles. And so then they turned around later in the day and announced that McCaffery has been given a 2-game suspension, not by the league, but by the university. Your thoughts on how this story has ultimately resolved itself?
Well, first of all, Iowa got the ultimate kind of out to get Dolphin back in. I absolutely unequivocally fail to understand how this is even remotely with the coach a controversy. This happens, I'm not kidding you, every single game. Coaches say things to referees. I honestly think
you heard cheating mother effer. You heard that?
Oh, God.
You're fixing the game for the opponent. You heard that.
That's the prologue.
All right, so let's go. Let's go to that then.
Yeah.
What's like? Have you heard ripping the refs along the line, or the umpires in your case, along the lines of what McCaffrey's accused of doing against in Ohio State? Let
me tell you a story real quick.
Okay.
We're playing in Baltimore in the 90s, and I'm with the Phillies. And we have a third base coach named John Vukovic, who he's from the Dallas Green school of he who is loudest is right. Okay? He is the ultimate red ass. And during the game, the umpires are blowing calls left and right. And he's not the head coach, so it's really not his place. He was so mad at the umpires that he went after the mascot. After the game, John Vukovic marched down to the Oriole Birds dressing room. And I played in Baltimore. I knew who the bird was. And I'm following him, trying to stop him from losing his job. He pounds on the door, and he's yelling about the officials the whole time. The refs, or the umpires. And the Oriole bird opens the door. Vuk doesn't know who it is and says, "Where's the bird?" And the guy says, "Oh, dude, you just missed him. He just left. He went out. He's down the hallway. You tell him I'm coming for that MF, that word. When he gets back here, I'll kill him." He's like, "All right, dude, no problem." Shuts the door, and I'm there going, "Wait a minute. Oh, my God." He then went to the umpire's room looking for the bird as an excuse to get into the umpire's room to strangle them. And it was, but yes, that I've heard things that you can't believe. I've heard umpires talk about other umpires.
Really? Give me, without naming names, give me it, because I've known a few Major League umpires like Tim McClellan and Eric Cooper, who are from right here in Des Moines. I used to talk to those guys all the time, do shows with them. Okay, so give me examples of give me an example of an umpire outing another umpire.
There are a couple. I'll have to ask you off air if I'm allowed to say this, but there was an umpire with. Okay, well, yeah, I can tell the story. So there's an umpire named C.B. Buckner. Okay, worst umpire in baseball that I've ever seen in my life. His fellow umpires told me what CB stood for.
Oh, no.
Yeah, confused brother. They told me that on the field. On the field. and to the point where after games they would be out on the field with him giving him instructions. Because they hated the fact that they had to answer for his mistakes. One of the greatest nicknames ever. But let me just tell you too, the person that gave me the umpire that gave me the nickname was another umpire who was black.
Oh my gosh.
That is confused brother.
That's a Kevin Hart or Chris Rock routine, is what you just shared with us. Except it's actually a true story. Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh!
And I was an umpire in front of our dugout. So Doug Mirabelli was a teammate of mine. He used to try and get me thrown out of games all the time. he would sit next to me on the bench and say things to umpires and like do the little kid thing when they'd look over.
Right.
Greg Gibson, another horrific.
Ladies, this is proof. Men never leave the 7th grade. We never leave the 7th grade. Never. No matter how much money we're making, we never leave the 7th grade. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The Greg Gibson was arguing with Terry Francona. Greg Gibson was a horrible umpire and a kind of just a jerk in front of our dugout. And he says out loud for the bench to hear, "You realize you're arguing with the best young umpire in baseball right now, right?" And Tito's like stunned into silence. And everybody in the bench is like, "Wait, what? What did you just say? Like, repeat that." And he's like, looks over at the bench like, "You guys shut up. It's none of your business." We're like, "No, you're done forever."
Did you see managers act like this? Did you ever see a manager chase an umpire in a hallway, anything like that?
Yep.
You did?
Yep. You had coaches that were specifically in play. Remember the dude on the sidelines who was the positioner for the coach?
The get back coach?
Yeah, the get back coach.
Yeah.
Every team has one for a specific coach. In Arizona, it was Bob Welch. When we cleared the benches and fought in Arizona, we had one coach that was designated to be the Welch get-back coach because Bobby would kill anyone and fight anybody, and they had to make sure that he didn't just get in the middle of a fight.
Because he took it seriously.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Let's try to see if we are gatekeepers or elitists or neither. All right. So I was perusing the various sports sites looking for a couple of more topics for today's show for us to debate. And I saw this headline at CBS Sports: the honky tonk man to be second inductee into the WWE Hall of Fame class of 2019. And I wasn't sure what to think of that. First of all, I remember the honky tonk man back in the day. Mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart was his manager. And he used to, had this old school Conway Twitty kind of Merle Haggard country music motif with the Elvis, sideburns thing going.
Look at that.
Does this belong? I need to ask a guy that has world championship rings. Does the news of the honky tonk man making Vince McMahon's Hall of Fame, does it belong on a sports site in your view?
It doesn't matter what I think. The only thing that matters is what the fans think.
Okay.
Right? I mean, wrestling is, I've never, ever been interested in it.
I loved it when I was a kid, Curt. I was obsessed with it. I had the wrestling album. Todd Zylstra and I on his house on Den Hartog Street in Wyoming, Michigan. He had a pool in the backyard. We used to reenact Jimmy Superfly Snuka off the top of the steel cage against Don Magic Morocco, Magnificent Morocco at WrestleMania 1 all the time. And then when I found out, let me tell you what happened with me in wrestling. I was up one morning eating my cereal, and I'm reading the Agate Kicker note section of the Grand Rapids Press sports section, because the WWF back then was just in town the night before, and they mentioned that 3 WWF stars, and their names were like John Smith and Dan Wallace. We're all arrested together, busted with wacky tobacco, the icky sticky, and driving under the influence. They were drunk. They were out partying last night in GR. And I'm like, who are these guys? And then the next line, it said, otherwise known as Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Nikolai Volkov in the Iron Sheik. And I was crushed because I really believed Nikolai Volkov. He sang the Soviet national anthem so sincerely. I really believed he was sent here by the Kremlin. I really thought the camel clutch was taught on Iranian wrestling mats to wrestlers like the Iron Sheik. And I really thought Hacksaw Jim Duggan was a real American man. I thought this stuff was real.
Let me just say, if there was ever any doubt of the level of nerdness in you, that soundbite you just said guarantees you into the first ballot, maybe first unanimous Nerd Hall of Fame.
There's a reason my wife said if she hadn't had my 3 kids, she'd be convinced I'm still a virgin. I've heard that our entire marriage. Yes.
You just said camel clutch in all seriousness. With pain behind it, by the way.
I can still remember that moment. I was sitting right there eating breakfast. I was crushed.
Less crushed about Santa being fake than you were.
Yes, I thought this was real. I had the wrestling album. I watched the wrestling cartoon. I still know the words to "I Am a Real American," Hulk Hogan's entrance theme. I still know the words.
I remember Hulk. I remember. Oh my God! I just forgot his name. The Slim Jim.
Talking about there was Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, the Junkyard Dog.
Slim Jim.
Slim Jim.
The guy that did Slim Jim commercials.
Are you thinking of Randy Macho Man Savage?
Yes.
Oh, that guy. Yeah.
Was it Gravedigger?
Oh, you're thinking of The Undertaker.
The Undertaker.
Yeah.
And Rock. Those were the only.
I was one of the rare fans. I watched both WWF and NWA on TBS. Like, I freaking loved Ric Flair, man. Yeah. I loved and the Four Horsemen, Tully Blanchard, Arn Anderson, Ole Anderson. Oh yeah. But now you're taking me back.
I back at that age, I was like, wow, this stuff happens in what appears to be a very scripted manner. Like, and thinking, holy cow, that upset really helps, and then I realized, but here's the thing. I didn't realize what incredible athletes these guys were.
Yeah, see, that's the thing I learned later in life, is it actually is real, but the outcomes are scripted, right?
Well, here's the thing. Yeah. I don't care who you are. If you have to script Hulk Hogan falling on you, you either have a mental disability that no one can cure, or you're getting paid a lot of money.
Right.
And you see these guys. The sadness for me is that a lot of the steroid stuff and the sideshow stuff has led them to short lives, and that's not a good thing. But you look down south. Whoa!
Hey, Ric Flair just turned 70.
It is NASCAR, and a close second is wrestling.
You need to watch the ESPN 30 for 30 on Ric Flair.
Yeah.
Holy cow, that's great.
That's one of the few things I think they've mastered, and there's probably nothing as good as
that. Is absolutely great. And then HBO and I ended up renting it on one of the streaming services. HBO did an Andre the Giant documentary about a year or two ago. That's fantastic as well. So
really,
I guess okay. I guess we're okay. I guess so. We're gonna say if it's what the public wants, right?
Yes.
Then
it is. The Hall of Fame is all about the fans anyway, right?
I guess I don't know. I don't know much about the Hall of Fame. So,
but I'm saying
you're a lot closer to Hall of Fame than I am.
And some would say I'm a lot farther away.
All right, man. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care.
Yep. See you tomorrow. Hey.